Video is aimed at new users for the CLiKAPAD system. So what we're going to do is take a brief look at how to set up and test the hardware, then how to make a simple multiple choice vote and run that and get the data out at the end of the session. So this is only going to run us through the basics, but it's a good place to start. So to begin with, we're going to have a look at the hardware setup. There are two parts to this. So one is the voting device that's used by the audience, and the other is the receiver. So the keypad sends its data using RF, like walkie-talkie radios do. So it's not like infrared, like your remote control for the television, where you've got to point it at the TV itself. With RF, it will travel through walls to a degree and through bodies and things like that. So they don't need to point at the other device, which is the box that you can see on the right that has just the word CLiKAPAD on it. That's the receiver. So that's listening out for data from the keypads, and you just connect that by the USB cable that came with it into your laptop. If for any reason you don't have that cable, so if that gets lost, it is a standard USB cable like you'd get if you bought a new printer, for example. So quite easy to get hold of one of those. Not that I'm recommending you lose that. So plug the receiver in. Obviously, by this point, you need to have installed the voting software. You can see that I have got it installed because just here I've got a button that says add-ins. So if I click on add-ins, that will bring up my CLiKAPAD menu. I've got a second add-in here, but you can ignore that. So the CLiKAPAD menu's got all your voting controls, and it's hopefully fairly self-explanatory in terms of what each one does. So right now we want to set up and test our hardware. So we're going to go to Setup, and then we're going to come across to here, Keypads. Now I've got my receiver plugged in, and I can see that the software can see it because I've got a serial number here. On a new user's computer, it won't have the keypad numbers filled in. These will just have dashes in them. So the first time that you set up and test the system, you have to tell it the keypads that you're intending to use. On my desk today, I've got keypads 1 through to 10, so my lowest number is 1 and my highest number is 10. To put those in, you simply type in the boxes. So if I only had 1 to 5, for example, my lowest is 1, my highest is 5. And then to test the keypads, all that you do is click on this button here that says test. Grab one of your keypads and press a number on it. And you'll see that number come up in the test screen as soon as I press a relevant number. So I'm going to get keypad 3. And I've pressed number 5. So next to keypad 3, it now says 5. If you want a larger display and showing one keypad at a time, you can just click on this tab here, and you can see which keypad's voted and what it's voted. I've just voted again on the same keypad, and I've updated that to response being 8. Now, we always recommend when you get a new system that you test using the number 8. And when you've got a keypad in front of you, hopefully it'll be clear as to why. At the top right hand corner of the keypad, there's an LED that will light up showing the voter what they pressed. The only number that lights all the segments of the LED is number 8. So that's a good button to press to test that your LEDs are all working properly. So I'm just going to grab a different keypad and press a different number. So I'm going to vote 1 on keypad 5, and you can see that's updated. If I go back to the grid display, which is how we normally have the view set up, you can see that those two keypads have both voted. And you could go through and test all of the rest of them. Again, if this is a brand new system, I would suggest that you test every single keypad and make sure that what you've been delivered is all good and in working order. Once you've finished and tested them all, you just press exit and then say OK. So we know now that our hardware's working, but we haven't actually got any votes to run to fully test the software. So what we're going to do is make some. So there's some settings that you need to consider when you're using your voting software. The first is you've got to be careful about where you save your files, because the PowerPoint is needing to talk also to the voting software. It does need to all be saved locally. So you don't want to be saving on a network drive, And you also don't want to be saving to a folder on your laptop that gets backed up to OneDrive or similar. So that can throw people a little bit because you feel you've saved it locally because you've put it in documents, for example, or onto your desktop. Actually, those folders do get synced to, in most people's case, if you've got Office 365, they're getting backed up for you. That can cause you some problems and stop the communication working properly. So what I recommend is that you make a new folder on your C drive. In some cases you'll need an IT department, for example, to do that for you. But if you've got that folder saved directly onto C, then you know that the whole C drive doesn't get backed up to OneDrive. So I'm just going to go on to mine, and I make a folder on my computer that says voting files, and that's where I keep all my presentations. That's what I would recommend you do, assuming you have got the rights to add folders here. If you right click and you say new folder, and I'm going to call this voting files 2. So if I save everything into voting files 2, it should all work properly for me. So that's the first thing. The next thing that you need to do is make sure that your display settings are correct. So if you go to your desktop, right click, choose display settings, and there's only one setting that we want to check on here, and that's this one, scale and layout. It's important that this is set to 100%. If it's not, then you could find that although you've lined all your graphs up nicely, they don't actually line up when you show them live. So that can be a problem. So go and check on your scale and layout. There's a drop down here. So you can see on my computer 150% is recommended. So that would have been the default, but I've changed it to 100. If you find that after changing down to 100 that you can't really read what's on screen properly, what I'd suggest you do is change your display resolution to a lower resolution so that you can read things. So long as you're sticking with a ratio that matches your slide size, you'll be fine. If in doubt, this is quite a good one to choose, 1920 by 1080 and then 100%. You should be able to read everything just fine. Okay, so once you've done that, that should just remain in place. What I would do whenever you connect to a new screen or projector, so you might be working at your desk making the file, but then you're going into the training room in order to run the presentation, or perhaps you're going to a conference venue, I would just double check that this is still sitting at 100%. Okay, so that's the boring setup bit done. So let's get on to actually making and running a vote. So I'm just going to close out of there, come back to PowerPoint. And the way I would suggest you create your votes is to go to CLiKAPAD, New Slide Wizard, and start by saving your presentation into that new folder that you made. So we're going to save to C and voting files 2, the one that I just made, and then we'll give it a new name. So I'm going to call mine test presentation and hit save. And then the wizard will take you to the options for the type of slide that you want to make. Now, most of the time, the default one of voting slide is going to be exactly what you want. So all you do is click the button that says go. And what I get presented with now is a list of available templates. Now you can make your votes individually by walking through the wizard, typing in a question, typing in answers, and doing all the settings yourself. But before you get to doing that, I would suggest that you get familiar with the templates that are already available to you, because they should cover most of your requirements. So what I would like to do to start with is just look at these column charts and bar charts. So a column chart will give you vertical columns on your slide. So I'm just going to choose that one, and that will make me a new slide. And there we can see we've got a graph with 4 options. So if we're doing 1 to 4 on our slide, that's all great. We'll have a quick look at how you change that if you had more or less options when we move on to making the next one. But let's just keep things simple for the moment. And I'm going to say, which is your favorite season? So the important thing to remember at this point is all of the wording is just done in PowerPoint. The only thing that we need to use the voting software for is to create the graphing and decide on the options available whilst people are voting. So we'll walk through those bits in a moment. But the first thing is to get the PowerPoint looking exactly how you want it. You can make all the usual changes. So if you want to put images on your slide, you can. You can obviously change your fonts and things like that, absolutely as normal. So if you're quite good at PowerPoint, this side of things isn't going to be a problem for you at all. You just get all of that working right, and then we can run the vote. If you've got a slide master with your branding on, of course, you can also apply that in the usual way through PowerPoint. So let's just run the one that we've just made. We'll leave it on all the default settings and just have a look at how that works. I'm just going to pop in one more slide afterwards. We can have as many slides before and after our votes as we want to. Even after making all the voting slides, you can move things around in the deck. It's not going to cause you any problems at all. So let's run this as though we're now presenting live to an audience. So go full screen, and when we get to a voting slide, you'll find that it opens a vote, and I've got mine set so that it also shows me which keypads are expected to vote and haven't voted yet. So that's what the waiting for box is at the top. So that's saying keypads 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, which are the only ones I've set up, all haven't voted yet. So if I grab a keypad and I make a choice, then we'll see that vote come in. So now we've got one vote, and you'll notice that in the waiting for box, keypad 2 has disappeared. So keypad 2's cast a vote, but the other keypads haven't. So I'm now going to vote on keypad 5 as well, and you'll see that one disappear. So fairly simple. In terms of the voter, all they're doing is pressing the number for the option they want to choose. Now, if they press a number and then they think, actually, I didn't want to vote for option 4, I wanted to vote for option 3, all that they do is press again. It will only remember the last button that they pressed, so it will forget that they ever chose option 4, for example. Once you've got enough votes in, you can just click as though you're going to your next slide or animation. It will close the vote and immediately show you how they voted. So nobody chose spring in our example, but we had a third each on each of the other options. So you might notice that doesn't add up to 100%. That's due to rounding. So each of those have got 33.333 per option. So it's showing as 99%. If you're concerned about these things not adding up to 100%, we can switch on decimal places. So to make a change to that template, we're not going to say new slide this time. We're going to say slide editor, and we'll go in and we'll just make a couple of changes on this one before we go on to making our bar chart. So in the graphing tab, we've got some options for colors and things. So if I particularly didn't like the color green, let's click on the green one and we'll make that blue. So that's made that change. You can use specific RGBs. So if you've got brand guidelines that tell you specific colors, you can just type those in here. But the bit that I'd like to change first is I'd like to add a decimal place. So if we go into here and we say we're going to show that to 2 decimal places, and then I'm going to use the big lilac button to show a preview of how the slide looks. So you can see now that's not using my real data, this is example data, but it's showing it all to 2 decimal places. We'll vote on it again in a moment so you can see that working properly. We've got some extra options here. So bar size, we can say, let's make those a little bit chunkier. We can also change the font size here. So this won't affect what's in your PowerPoint. This will only affect what's on your graph. So to change the font size on the wording for the question, you just do that in PowerPoint as normal, but you can see I'm making those fonts a little bit bigger here. But if we want to see how that all looks, we might want to hide that toolbar. So this little pin here will collapse the toolbar so that you can see what your graph looks like. And now I can use my mouse and just drag this to wherever I want it to be on the slide. I was actually quite happy with where it was, so I'm just going to pop that back. If you want to make more changes, click on Show Toolbar and you can make some more adjustments here until you're happy. Once you're happy with how that looks, just click the X to close that box and it's saved the changes. So we're going to hit Save and Go because we're all finished with changing this one. And then let's just run that again. So we'll go full screen, get to our voting slide, and then we'll cast some votes on the keypads. So let's do, I'm just going to do 3 votes again so we can see the same type of result but with the decimal places. And you'll notice I'm not waiting for keypads 1 and 4. You can do, but there's no reason why you can't close a vote. If you know somebody's not going to vote, perhaps they've left the room, that's not a problem. You can close it anyway. So click to advance and you can see that that now makes a lot more sense to people because they can see that that will end up being 100%. Obviously it's 3 recurring after that decimal place, but you get the idea. Okay, so that is a vote slide set up and running, and I now want to add another vote. So if we want all of our slides to look the same, all that we would do at this point is make a copy of this one and change the words. So if I say right click, duplicate, I've now got another copy, and then I can change the wording of that question and away we go. If I wanted to change the wording of the answer options, of course I would just do that in PowerPoint too. So I've now got a slide deck with 2 votes. So once you've got the first one right, it's actually quite quick to make the rest. Let's just make another one and choose a different template. So still voting slide, go, and wait for our little list to pop up, and this time we're going to do horizontal bars. Now I like these because it will line the bars up with the answer options, and I think that's nice and easy for people to read. However, there is a bit more work to do on this because you've got to make sure that everything aligns correctly. So let's say that on this one we're actually only going to have, actually let's add an option, let's do it that way. So if we add a line at the end, and I'm going to say this is option 5. So we can actually type some words in, or we can just have those saying option labels, but let's just put the days in and then we'll adjust our graph to match up with our question wording. So we've got a problem at the moment because we've got 5 options on the slide, but we've only got 4 bars. So the first thing that I do is get that slide looking how I want it. So maybe we're going to copy the formatting from that one into that one. So as soon as you're ready with your PowerPoint, again we're going to go to the editor. So that is Add-ins, CLiKAPAD, and we're not making a new one, we're going to edit an existing one, so we choose Slide Editor. And this will force the voting software to go and read the slide, so we can see it's now seen those answer options, and it says there are 5 items. So if we go to the graphing tab now, actually we've got 5 bars, so that's great, but they're not going to line up nicely with our answers because we haven't set the position yet. So again, we're going to use that lilac-y colour button, set graph position, and that will give us our full size preview. First thing I'm going to do is unpin that so I can see what I'm doing. I'm just going to drag this box and stretch it so that it's more or less right, and then open the toolbar again and let's make those a little bit bigger. We'll make our font a little bit bigger, and we can also stretch this out if we want to. So once you're happy here, close that down. I'm going to leave that one without decimal places. I tend to leave them at default, which is no decimal place. So all done on that. let's hit save and go on that one. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to launch from the slide before. So if I've already got data on a slide and I haven't made any changes to the voting settings, when I next show the slide, there's already a result on it. So it does tend to try and protect its data. And we'll cover in a moment how you clear that out so that you can vote again. But let's just click to advance to our next slide. And there's our new one. And of course, there's no graph on that one. And I'm just going to cast a few votes on that one and click. And that's my results for that slide. So all pretty straightforward. So if this was our live voting session, we've got exactly what we need now. We can email this to a colleague and they'll be able to see how people voted on each of those slides. So this is now just an image on the slide. They don't need voting software to be able to see this. The other thing that you might want to share is the data behind this. So let's go to the CLiKAPAD menu and voting results and then choose this one. So that one said view/export, which is what I want to do. So first I see a preview that shows me that there's data in this presentation. Then I just tell it to export. So send it to Excel and we'll just have to wait a moment while it saves the workbook. So we can give it a name. What it's done is it's taken the name of the presentation and just added a date and time stamp to the end of it. But of course you can change that to whatever you want it to be. So let's say I want to call that session 1. Hit save and it's going to pop all of that data into a workbook. And of course, once we're in Excel, we can format that however we need to and we can do any analysis that we need to. So what we've got here is a number of worksheets. So results by percentage, which matches what we saw on the slide. Results by number of votes. We've got a summary that shows you each question and the scores that it got, and again by number of votes. And this one is particularly important if you're doing something like training, because this will show you how each keypad voted for every question. So we can see which ones they got right, which ones they got wrong. Okay, so that's our data export. And then what I might want to do now is clear the data so that I can run this presentation again with a new group. Most of the time you're going to make your presentation, then you're going to vote on it to test it. So you're going to need to do this before you run it again, because just to cover again, the reason when I land on the slide, it's already got graphs on it, and that's my old data. So let's clear that data out, voting results, clear data/reset. I get warned twice about this because obviously that wouldn't be a great idea if you need the data for something and haven't saved it yet. So I'm going to say, yes, I do want to continue. And then when I get the second warning, I'm going to confirm again that I do want to continue. So my data is all now gone. And on these graphs, you'll notice that's a completely different result. And it's got the word sample on it. So that's what you're looking out for to know that this is a clean presentation that's ready to run and doesn't have data. Every graph in the set will say the word sample. So the next time we run it, and don't worry, I'm not going to make you watch me vote on all of these again. I'm just going to vote on the first one, but you can see everything is back to working again. So let's close that, and there's my new result. So that's the beginnings of getting started, and I would say it's probably worth your time just going to CLiKAPAD, new slide wizard, voting slide, go, and testing each one of the templates that are available to you, because they all do a slightly different job. So I'm not going to run through all of them now because that's something that you can have a look at yourself. One thing I do want you to note though is there is a scroll bar here, so there are some more templates if you scroll across. So let's add one of these 10 option ones so you can see the type of thing that you might find in these templates. We'll run through how to use all of those in separate videos, but this is a good starting point for you to get familiar with the software.